Good morning, everyone. Today, we're going to be moving on in science from our unit where we talked about biological evolution and dinosaurs and fossils and things like that. And we're going to move on to our one final concept in science to talk about over the last 2 weeks because it's also a very important science. So, when we talk about biological evolution, traits, and anytime we're talking about life science, we're talking about biology, okay? Now we're going to move on to a different type of science called physical science. Physical science discusses any way that things sort of exist on earth, the way that force and motion exists, okay? So we're not talking about light, but we're talking about the way that things move on earth. One of the most obvious forces on Earth and in the universe is gravity. So we're talking more about we'll talk a little bit more about space science and gravity and more about the way the universe is and the rules of the universe. All right, so here is a quick review of some things that we should already know. Okay, when we're talking about how far you have to walk to get from one place to another, in this case, how far do you have to walk to get to the chalkboard in the classroom? We're talking about distance. Okay, so that's the scientific term we're talking about to discuss how far away something is. Okay, how far is the teacher's desk? Again, we're not in the classroom, okay, but if you think about where you sit in the classroom compared to the chalkboard and the teacher's desk, or even if you have to go to the bathroom. Now, third graders generally we're all in the same area of the building, so the bathrooms are pretty close, but the girls' bathroom is way down the hall, so the distance is much farther than the boys' bathroom. Okay, so we're talking about distance when we're talking about how far something is. Okay, those things all have one thing in common. What is it? Distance is how we measure how far away an item is. Okay, we could measure it in footsteps. All right, if we take the same size footstep, we could use our footsteps to measure it. In fact, when I go out golfing, you can't have a ruler. You don't have measuring tape out there to measure how far away you have to hit the ball. So golfers they take strides. They count their strides to count the distance, and it's really helpful. That's a way that you can measure distance. Of course, we know we measure distance with rulers or by measuring the length between two places. Okay, we can measure it in centimeters, inches, feet, yards, even miles. Okay, and different countries use the metric system like centimeters and meters and kilometers. So distance is how far away something is. The farther away something is, the farther its distance, the bigger its distance is from you. The closer something is, the smaller its distance is between you and that object. So what's farther from you now? Your desk or your home? Okay, so now if we were using this slide in school, we'd obviously be sitting most likely at our desks. So we would obviously say that the desk is closer to us. The distance is much shorter between you and the desk than you and your home. Now, in this case, you're at home, so now your home is closer. So it depends on it depends on your location. So which object is closest to you and has the smallest distance from you? Your house, the moon, or the sun? Well, obviously, even if you were at school, your house would have a shorter distance between you and the house than the moon or the sun. Interestingly, also, between these two, the moon and the moon is much closer than the sun. So the moon has a shorter distance or a smaller distance. All right, so let's review some. Okay, that was distance. So now, what takes longer to do? Okay, now we're talking about something different, not distance. Now we're talking about time. What takes longer to do? Watching a TV show or washing your hands after dinner? What do we measure to figure this out? We measure with time. To figure out those answers, you need to measure time. Time is used to show how long it takes to do something. Going back to that question, it would take a shorter time, about maybe 30 seconds if you wash your hands properly, to wash your hands compared to 30 minutes to watch a TV show. So that means because there's 60 seconds in a minute, it would take you 60 times longer to watch a TV show that's 30 minutes compared to washing your hands that takes 30 seconds. So time. What are some units of time? Well, we have seconds, we have minutes, we have hours. What comes next after hours? We have days, we have months, years, then we have decades. Then if we wanted to count 100 years, if a decade is 10 years, 100 years is a century. And then after a century comes 1,000 years, which is a millennia or a millennium. But more than one is millennia. So a millennium is 1,000 years. So again, it goes seconds. 1 second is like that. 60 seconds is a minute. 60 minutes is an hour. 24 hours in a day. 365 days in a year. 10 years in a decade. 10 decades in a century. And 10 centuries in a millennium. So we're talking about our base 10 numbers when we're measuring time once we get past a year. So when we're talking about how far away something is, we're using distance. We're talking about distance. And if we're measuring how long your desk is, okay, you're talking about distance. You're measuring how long it is from one end to another, the distance between those 2 points. Finally, if you measured how long it took you to walk from your house to your friend's house, you'd be talking about time, because you're talking about not the distance between, you're not measuring the length, you're talking about how long it takes to get there. Okay? So there's distance and time. And then next time, we're going to talk about a third sort of aspect of physical science, forces in motion, which is speed. Okay, so distance, time, and speed go together, and we will get into that a little bit more next time. So that's all for today. I will have a couple questions for you to answer, but that's all we're going to do for science today. All right, so have a great day.